Hello, I'm Keith and welcome to another home media minefield, helping you with information to navigate the complexities of home cinema and home media entertainment. And for today's episode, I am going to be looking at the 4K release of Knives Out, Rian Johnson's 2019 whodunit film featuring an ensemble all-star cast headed up by Daniel Craig. We're going to look into this release right now. So Lionsgate have really gone to town with this physical release, as it includes a 4K UHD, a Blu Ray disc and a digital download, which is something that is often missing from UK releases, not to mention nearly 3 hours of bonus features. Now the version I have here is the HMV First Edition release. Although there are other releases from other vendors. I believe there's a Steelbook version of this available as well. What's nice about the first edition release is you get this slipcase with some different artwork, but you get the normal 4K release in there as well. You get some additional art cards, which I'll show a close-up of. The actual theatrical ensemble still there. And then it looks like we've got a card for each of the characters with the tagline. Oh yeah, these are good. So yeah, the publicity shot for each one. Really is a fantastic cast in this film. Headed up by this man. It's really nice that they've included this in this collector's set. It is still available. I will put links down in the show notes below for where you can find this. But even regardless, these are nice goodies to have with it, but even regardless of that, this, as I said, 4K UHD version is well worth your time if you're a collector. This book, Hook, Line and Sinker by Harlan Thrombey, who is the character in the film played by Christopher Plummer. So you get this booklet, this story, which is sort of written as a piece of in-universe marketing, so that's rather nice. Now starting with the video here, this is presented in Dolby Vision HDR. It's actually upscaled from a 2K digital intermediate. However, the high dynamic range provides a lot of detail because DOP cinematographer Steve Yedlin worked really hard with the algorithms on this to make it look like 35mm film. So you do get a lot of contrast and detail in this. It is also quite a colourful film. Having said that, the Blu Ray edition looks equally as good as well, but just lacks some of the definition within the contrast. Now the audio on this has a Dolby Atmos track. Obviously this isn't a special effects action driven movie, so the sound effects are very specific. You get things like you can hear things going on in other rooms from certain character perspectives as in the movie. That's quite nicely separated, but the important thing is the dialogue is very crisp and it's easy to follow what is going on here. It actually sounded great on my setup. Now for the special features, this for me is where this set really shines. There are a lot of special features on here which is unusual for a normal studio release nowadays. This is almost competing with a boutique style label for the amount of effort that they've gone to in producing additional content for this disc. So we're going to have a look into that now. To start with, you get two in-depth audio commentaries on this, one by writer-director Rian Johnson, and a second commentary where Rian is joined by director of photography Steve Yedlin and actor Noah Egan. There's also 5 minutes of deleted scenes with optional commentary on those. Nothing amazing here. Obviously Rian Johnson wrote this, so pretty much knew what he wanted in the film. The scenes that are removed were really only removed for pacing reasons, and he explains that. But there is a rather good scene with Daniel Craig and Toni Collette where Daniel Craig cracks a really corny joke at the end of it, which is quite amusing. But yes, you get to see the scenes here, but I can see why they were cut out of a film that was already running over 2 hours long. And next up is the sort of thing that I really miss. It's an excellent making of documentary which runs nearly 2 hours, but is actually broken down into segments where you can select a play all if you wish. It starts off with the idea and writing of the film, where Rian Johnson talks about the genesis of how this project came about, how it was an idea that he'd had kicking around for a long time, but how the production of this happened very rapidly, and coming off something like Star Wars The Last Jedi, which took 4 years, it was quite refreshing for him to go back to something smaller where the turnaround was only 4 months. Next up, we get an interview with casting director Mary Vigneault about the wonderful ensemble cast that they assembled for this, starting obviously with Daniel Craig, but how all the other parts then fell into place. So it's really good to find out about the casting process. Following the production process through, we then get an interview with costume designer Jenny Egan, who talks about the very specific costumes for each of the characters in this, which were designed to obviously fit into a normal contemporary environment, but at the same time to say something individual about each character, and how they worked with a large colour palette across this to do that. We also get production designer David Crank talking about the production design here. Largely this film was filmed on location, in real locations that they had to dress and change for the purposes of the film. There was very little set work done, but he talks about his collaboration with Rian in creating the correct feel and look for this film. This of course leads to the cinematography and lighting by Steve Yedlin, and this part of the documentary is particularly interesting in so much as Rian Johnson originally wanted to shoot this on 35mm film in the 1:85:1 aspect ratio, but Steve pushed back and pushed him to go digital on this, and they have quite in-depth conversations as to why they made those choices and why they felt the way that they eventually went worked. So anybody really interested in the camera and lighting side of things, this particular featurette will be of great interest and quite intriguing. Next, Bob Duxey talks about the editing process on this film. As we've already mentioned from the deleted scenes, not a lot was cut from it, but they talk about the structure and the shaping of this story to really work within this whodunit style genre. You get quite a lengthy session on the music of the film. For this particular film, Rian was able to use his cousin Nathan Johnson to do the music, who he'd worked with before on some of his earlier films, and they talk about the style and feel of the music here, and even areas where they had originally decided not to have music, but Nathan wrote music for a particular part knowing that Rian would probably need the music for it. And again, you see the scoring and spot sessions here, so this is a very good part of the documentary as well. And then we go right the way through the release to the specific trailers and how they had to digitally change and enhance things for the trailer, right the way through to the actual release of the film, and we see the premiere and the reaction at the premiere. Following that, we get a 7-minute interview with Rian Johnson, where he talks about the various influences for this film. He talks about his love of the genre, and he discusses everything from Agatha Christie to Sherlock Holmes to Columbo, and how he sort of tried to mix those elements in on this. And then we get a 45-minute Q&A with the cast and crew, at the Screen Actors Guild. A majority of the ensemble are here along with Rian Johnson, and it's quite interesting because one of the first questions they're asked is, do they remember when they got their Screen Acting Guild, their SAG cards? And I was quite astounded on how many of the actors had no idea, and their representation just dealt with it for them. But yeah, some good a good Q&A session here and a good edition. And then finally we have some amusing viral ads to go with this campaign, featured around the characters and the businesses and the publishing companies that the characters run, along with all the theatrical trailers here. One of them actually featuring Rian Johnson doing a kind of Rod Serling piece to camera on this. And that about rounds out my review for Knives Out 4K release. As you probably gathered, of course I like the film, but I'm actually also very happy with the release that Lionsgate have done here, not only because of the picture and audio quality, but also the amount of special bonus features etc. included. I shall put some links down below as to where you can find this if this is something of interest to you, and if indeed you did find this helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell icon so that you don't miss anything moving forward. If there's anything particular that you'd like me to cover, please put that in the show notes below and I will try and get to it. But in the meantime, I will see you at the next edition of Home Media Minefield.